But look, we heard, didn't we, about the £22 billion black hole. We know that Rachel Reeves promised to fix the foundations of our economy. Well, I've got to tell you now, it's not going well, because we've apparently now got a black hole that's in the region of about £50 billion we're going to need per annum to try and sort this absolute mess out. It's been suggested, Aaron Bastani, that tax rises might be the way that she has to go on this. What do you think?
Well, for people watching or listening to this, you now have an answer as to why Rachel Reeves was crying in Parliament. She was crying in response to the inability to pass legislation that would have taken several £billion off people on various benefits. And she was crying because Labour's inability to pass that legislation, it's the first time that something has failed at the second reading, I think, since the mid-1980s with Margaret Thatcher and Sunday opening times. Doesn't happen very often. Barely happens at all, really, over the last 120 years, 100 years. She was crying because if you can't get that through, you're not going to be able to make cuts to get this figure down, which therefore locks in, like you say, tax rises. That's why she was crying. She was crying because come the autumn budget, her political career is over because she's going to have to find £51.1 billion. There are, of course, other ways that the money could be generated. Important to say, 8 billion of that 51 billion, or it's 41.2 billion if you don't include the buffer, 8 billion of that can be found from just not moving tax thresholds, which, let's be honest, they were going to do anyway. Yeah. They weren't going to move before 2029.
But you say, Aaron, just not moving tax thresholds. Just not moving tax thresholds is a major increase in tax. And it puts more and more people every year into a 40% income tax band, which was designed for the super rich. And, but it was now perfectly normal people with ordinary jobs are being having a super rich super tax inflicted on them because they don't move those bands.
But we all knew that. Let's be honest. We all knew that was because it's been going on for. Hold on, Peter. That's been going on for several years. Actually. No, because it's been going on for several years.
Yeah, but people don't know it until it hits them, and it's only when this great spreading shadow of the 40% and all the other things that happen hits them.
Well, that's why politicians love it.
How important it is.
That's why politicians love it.
It's not a just thing. It's a really big thing.
I'm not saying. Well, I'm saying just because it's been going on for several years.
True enough, but it's important. It's very, very big.
No, you're entirely right.
Hit people very hard in their pockets.
Well, it's raising £8 billion, so it is significant. Politicians love it because, as you just said, people aren't necessarily going to notice that as they would with a bump in income tax rates. But in any case, that's 8 billion. They're going to have to find, frankly, more than 30 billion from tax rises. From, tax rises beyond what I've just mentioned, which is a hell of a lot of money. And finally, one more thing. We were seeing Keir Starmer talking about putting defence spending to 3.5% of GDP very recently. I was watching this, and they're just getting the headlines. It means he can go to Trump and say we're doing X, Y, Z. I'm watching this and thinking, with whose money? And nobody in the media was saying, well, hold on, sounds good, I agree or I disagree, but where's the money going to come from? Literally nobody in the media was asking that question.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GBNews discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GBNews to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Peter?
Well, it won't happen, of course. So many other things won't happen, and projects will start to be cancelled as well. But what I also see in this is expectation management. I think that leaking it at this level is telling people to expect a really, really, absolutely, totally appalling, monster-sized budget, when in fact they'll get a just normally appalling, moderately monster-sized budget, and they say, "Oh, phew, it's not as bad as they said it was in the summer." I think this is some expectation management going on here. We're being told it's worse than it actually is, simply to make it feel less bad when it happens. I really do. I think a lot of that goes on in politics.
See,
I would not be a bit surprised if this turns out not to be quite so bad. But they are in enormous trouble, as anybody would be in trouble. This crisis was created by Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson during the COVID panic. It all comes from this, the voluntary bankruptcy of the nation, and everything that's followed, the inflation and the tax increases, easily predictable and predicted by me, are now coming, and they will hurt like anything. And when I was saying to people, for goodness sake, stop accepting this, that was part of my reason for saying so. It's unavoidable. The sums don't add up. But the other thing, which will, I think, increasingly happen, because the spectre of the International Monetary Fund is on the horizon now, I think, is that all kinds of treasured projects, whether they're housing or hospitals or transport, will start being shelved. They'll just be cancelled. And there will be an awful lot of that going on because the money simply will not be there. It's coming.
People have conversations all the time, don't they, about the so-called social contract. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I know many of you well enough from talking to you over the years. You will think that this government has got a damn cheek, actually, even considering things like tax rises, when actually life in this country is getting harder and harder for millions of people, when we are throwing money hand over fist. I've lost count now, quite frankly, of how many millions per day we spend sticking people in the likes of 4-star hotels and all the rest of it. They've got a damn cheek.
Oh,
That's
come
what
on,
I hear you say.
come on, Michelle. How did anybody not see this coming? It was quite clear in their manifesto. And when Nick Ferrari asked Keir Starmer during the election campaign, what do you mean by working people? When he said that taxes wouldn't be increased on working people, he said people without savings.
Yeah, he said people, someone that couldn't write a cheque.
I mean, anybody with savings basically could expect, if they either voted Labour or they voted for reform and helped Labour in, they could expect what they're now getting. The Labour were actually startlingly honest in making it clear they were going to increase taxes. You couldn't read that manifesto and not see it. And yet millions of people would not. I spent weeks during that election campaign saying, look, don't be so stupid. This isn't just going to be another government. This is going to be a high-tax, very left-wing Labour government. And people said, no, you're just trying to boost the Tories. I wasn't. I was genuinely warning people of a real danger which now appears in our midst in the form of an approaching budget which will confiscate huge amounts of money from your pocket and mine for people who don't know what they're doing. And that is absolutely and wholly predictable. It was predictable during the election. You can't just say, oh, Labour didn't behave according to the social contract. Actually, if you read and listened to what they say, you knew this was coming.
Well, first of all, I didn't say that it's Labour that hasn't performed to the social contract, because actually, Peter, I would say that the Tories also didn't perform to the social contract. This whole mess that we've got ourselves in. I'm with you all. You know this already in terms of the COVID expenditure. I'm on the same page as you. And I also knew and told you guys at home often that there would be tax rises. But my point is, the scandal in all of this is that actually we are throwing money hand over fist for people that should not be in this country. And the problem that you've got, Peter, is it's one thing having to pay more tax if life gets better for you as a consequence, if you can get access to the NHS, I don't know, whatever. When life is getting worse for you and freeloaders, I'm going to be honest, seem to be getting whatever it is that they feel that they are entitled to. What's
new about that, Michelle? That revolution happened 20 years ago.
It doesn't matter if it's new or not, Peter.
And people
people
carried on voting for it. They voted for Blair with their mouths hanging open, and then they did it again, and then they put up with David Cameron, who he announced, "I am the heir to Blair," and they voted for him.
Well,
what do you expect if you keep voting for these these people, you'll get what you
pointed out
deserve.
the pillory of all of this, and I know that pillory is not a word, but it should be. You want to come in?
It is now.
I was going to say, try that at Scrabble at Christmas. I would disagree with Peter in so much as it's a high-tax government, but they're not left-wing for the reason you said, Michelle, that they're going to increase taxes and you're going to get less, right? That's the big problem for them. And I'd also say that Keir Starmer wasn't honest. We shouldn't say he was honest. His whole thing was, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. How are you going to pay for it? I'm going to grow the economy. I'm going to grow the economy.
You're right.
And barely anybody in the media. I was writing articles, I was coming on here, I was going anywhere I could saying, this is not a plan. Saying, I will grow the economy. Everybody wants to grow the economy. And people like Robert Peston, I don't want to name names, I shouldn't do that, ITV, BBC, LBC, they weren't quizzing them and grilling them when they should.
Absolutely weren't. There was only one question asked during the entire election. That was by Nick Ferrari. All the rest of it was just internal political drivel and gossip. But that's the sort of political coverage we get in this country. Most political writing is done by people who aren't interested in politics, let alone economics. So that's what you get. But people do need to be a bit more alert and listen a little bit more carefully to what's being said to them. Then you won't be surprised all the time. I'm not surprised.
Well, a lot of people are watching this. If you did vote Labour, sure, you might have thought to yourself, you know what, yes, we're going to get tax rises, but you probably thought they were going to be on the rich, that old chestnut. Anyway, if you did vote Labour,
well, they voted reform and put Labour in. That was
what do you think to what Peter has just said about tax rises then? Get in touch, join the conversation.